This is Brainy Podcasts with Soraya Shaw and Tracy Filler, inspiring creativity and innovation through evidenced neuroscience. Well, welcome back to Brainy Podcasts. It's just the two of us today, Soraya and I.
Nice.
And we're diving into something that we think is really quite current. We're not just dealing with change in business and leadership right now, but we're also dealing with the brain trying to keep up with all of that change. And that's sort of the lens that we're going to look through. Obviously, we're all things brainy. I guess there's three core things that we either believe in or we've got evidence of that we want to sort of focus on today. The first one is that we believe that state, as in mental state, comes before strategy, and that a low social battery, which is a phrase that we're hearing more of in conversations, is changing relationships, not just the energy that you're bringing into the room. And the third thing is about how we as humans still have the advantage over technical advancements. So that's kind of our starting point.
Yeah, I think just to add to that, what's important is what we're seeing, and it's being talked about. In fact, there was a really interesting article in the press this morning about what they're calling the frog effect, where actually AI is having such a kind of infecting the brain because people are assuming they're using it so much they're not actually using their own cognitive thinking and being predictable. So it's really depleting cognitive ability and load. But also, the brain is becoming so overloaded now because the world has just become so busy, so much information that we can't possibly keep up with it. It's absolutely impossible. And it's also having a real impact, and we'll talk about it a bit later, on our brain health itself, dementia, diseases. And so we've been looking at what difference does that make? And there's for the first time in May, there's a conference in Brussels, which is the Brain Capital Conference, which has never been done before. So Brain Capital is really the focus now for a future brain economy because of AI and technology and being in a 5.0 era. So it's so important to really understand it.
That links into us, and again, our ethos of companies utilizing all the brains in the business
Yeah.
and how to tap that as well. That's going to be fascinating hearing more about what comes out of that summit. I think that'll be, I
Amazing.
hope
Well,
that hopefully it will be an annual thing. And who knows, we might hop over there next
yeah,
May.
we might go over it. We've our actual one of our guests is actually going to be attending that summit, and they're going to be coming on and talking to us about it. Plus, the Applied Neuroscience Association, which we're both members of, they're going to be talking about it as well. So it's a really, and I talk about it in my neuro letter and all my work, as any of you who follow me will know. So it's a very, very important leverage for leaders and future business and how we shape our businesses. And because it's all about shaping the mind.
And again, we've known that for some time. We've really sort of discussed and taken our conversations down that route for quite some time now. I
Yeah,
think what's happening is we're starting to see data and information that's backing up some of the things that we're noticing in conversations
yeah,
and research papers, where you're particularly good at research
yeah.
papers. Sort
Yeah,
of
and
your
if we
bag.
think about our conversation with Charlotte on the 4-day week, Charlotte Ray from Sussex Uni, exactly showing how the brain overload and how you need to protect it and why it's so important, and actually
Yeah.
the benefits you get from it.
And I guess an element of our conversations with Leanne as well, when we were looking at psychosocial
Yeah,
safety. And if you're not safe, that is going to drain that battery anyway,
yeah, yeah,
because it's working overtime. So let's have a little
yeah,
look at what we're noticing then. What sort of things are we seeing and hearing, either through research or conversations that we're having? That seems like a good place to start, and why
yeah,
we decided to have this conversation on record.
yeah. No, I think it's I know through my work and what I'm hearing about is people are it's quite interesting because you've got companies that are doing so well at the moment. So burnout is really high because people are exhausted. They are literally working 48/7 if you want, actually, can so that's success stories, but it comes with a real cost.
Hmm.
And then other companies, big corporates that are doing so much restructuring, and we know that leadership is becoming much flatter, that middle management is disappearing. So all those layers that perhaps protected people and supported people, and there were more people to do the work, are disappearing. And AI has an impact on that because people haven't really worked out how to use AI. You
Yeah,
know,
and some haven't
it's
even started that journey, which is
yeah,
quite scary
yeah,
to think that people
yeah.
don't even have it on their top agendas.
Yeah. So I think it's and brain health, as we'll talk about why that's so important, but how looking at skills of the future are around resilience, flexibility, creativity, innovation, critical thinking, all the things that you and I, that's why we're here, what that we talk about, and how they're becoming, the spotlight is more and more on those the abilities to be able to do that.
And with the emerging structure change that we're seeing and the emergence of what we describe as the self leader,
Yeah.
there's becoming more and more around developing your personal resilience in
Mm.
situations as the pressure's higher on delivery and being measured on deliverables. There's that it seems to create a greater vulnerability. That's what I'm
Yeah.
noticing.
Yeah.
I had a call this morning before we recorded from one of my coachees where she was about to present to the board and panicking about her. She started off by saying it was about the slide deck, which she'd been working on. But actually, the real problem was there was too much data in it. How did she bring it to life? How's she going to get them on board with the journey?
Mm.
She knew where they needed to go, but how was she going to take them with them? So that ability to influence when you're feeling under pressure
Oh,
is
it's almost
also being
impossible.
heightened.
Yeah, yeah. I think what we're talking about, so what we're saying is everybody's not just dealing with change. More importantly, we're dealing with how the brain keeps up with change because everything we do is directed by our brain. So if our brain is being depleted, and we know it takes, has 20% of energy a day, and if you're depleting that energy because you're not resting, you're over worrying, you're overthinking, you're trying to kind of do everything before you're asked to do it, to be thinking ahead all the time, you're just depleting that whole energy in the brain. And actually
Yeah,
to recharge that is very difficult.
yeah, and of course, once your brain is tired and you've utilized all of its energy, whether you've used that in an effective way or not, it's depleted,
Yeah.
and you don't have the ability to critically think or
No,
create any nuance around what's in front of you in the
no,
moment.
no. Because I mean, as we know from a brain perspective, the prefrontal cortex shuts down because the amygdala, that's the center for meaning. Everyone thinks it's negativity, it's not, it's meaning. Will actually, through its own perceptions and experience, give a kind of direction to it. So if it's feeling really under pressure, so therefore not safe, it's shutting down. So our emotional kind of the anterior cingulate cortex, all that kind of area takes over, and
Just
so people
narrowing the
can't think.
field. Yeah, it
Yeah,
just
yeah,
narrows your
shutting
field.
down, and people just can't think. And as we're going to talk about, there's all repercussions that come out of there. It's not just your critical thinking and decision making, it's much more.
Let's have a little look around. In our notes, we've got down that brain health is not a soft issue.
No.
Which again takes me back to Leanne, where she said the soft stuff, as in what we used to call soft skill training, is the
Yeah,
hard stuff.
yeah.
And I just feel that any company that has really drilled down their optics on KPIs and data and not considered human connection, human engagement, and motivation of their team are really going to start to notice that in performance
Mm,
and ultimately the results and how well they weather this huge adaptation of integrating AI into workplace.
yeah. And part of that, just as you say that, is intergenerational as well, because expectations are so different. So, we've talked about how, you know, older generations, perhaps our training has been just to keep going, whereas younger generations are like, no, hold on a sec, I want to have a life and keep my health and look after myself. And there's a real tension going on at the moment, and that's only because of uh, um, our lens that we all look through and how we've been brought up. And it's not that there's any negativity towards it at all. It's everyone just predicts things in very different ways. And so that's about conversations that are needed.
Yeah,
But
so
I
our
think,
brain is a prediction machine. It's only basing
totally,
it on what it's got in there already,
yeah,
rather like a computer. We used to say garbage in and garbage out.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it sees patterns, it's just
Yeah,
that's what it does. You directed it.
yeah. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so how's this showing up in the workplace then? Because we hear this phrase social battery now. It's becoming quite a common thing.
Mm,
Certainly my kids and the kids around them, I say
yeah.
kids, they're adults, very much adults, but it is becoming a standard sort of conversation piece. But what we're really saying from a brain perspective, they'd never say, like, my cognitive bandwidth is depleted, is
Yeah.
never coming out. But they would say, my social battery's got nothing left.
Yeah.
So how's that then showing up when somebody still has to show up in a meeting and
Mm,
their battery is dead? What are
yeah.
we seeing when people are under that much pressure and they're probably getting heightened requirement to perform even better, sort of
Mm,
outdo their last performance? Um, I suppose what I see is people shutting up more in meetings. They're just not putting
mm.
themselves forward. Um,
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because, the brain is all about relationships, and as humans, we're all about relationships. And that's where one of our advantages is over AI. So if it's an advantage, because we can add the critical thinking and the creativity and the innovation becomes so important. But also, if your relationships are being impacted because you're so exhausted, you really can't be bothered to talk, small talk's gone out the window. You really just want to get it done and out. You want to get in that meeting, reach a decision, go. You're not interested in connecting, ideating, building things that are better and richer and more useful. You just want to just doing all the time.
do that we've mentioned
Yeah,
before.
yeah. So people
Um,
aren't connecting,
yeah,
shutting
and that,
down, being quiet, getting frustrated, being irritable, uh, all those things that we just know are when you leave the office at the end of the day or you leave your desk at the end of the day, you don't feel good because you haven't had a good day.
and actually that drains you even further rather than
Yeah,
heightens you because it isn't about effort. It's about, well, I for those watching on YouTube, I always sort of display, sort of used to do it in negotiating training years ago, a bit of a seesaw.
yeah,
So you've got the results that you're achieving versus the relationships you're left with. And if you haven't focused enough on the relationship, you might win the argument. You might get your idea over the line, but you may have damaged untold relationships
yeah.
within that room, be it the client, be it a supplier, be it your colleague or the
Mm,
boardroom.
mm,
So we need to think about balance between what we're winning and what we're left with
yeah,
in order to
yeah,
preserve and move forward. And that's why I mentioned earlier about the soft stuff, because that's how you don't just get stuff over the line by forcing the argument, by forcing your view. You do it through that collaboration, listening, all
mm,
these basic skills that we go, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. But how many people, when was the last time somebody can look back and go, I did that well? I
yeah,
listened really, really well.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that's where, having leaders as coaches becomes really important, teaching people the coaching skills,
Yeah.
because they are listening, questioning skills, aren't they? And we know curiosity and questioning is absolutely key.
And ironic, when people have this bandwidth issue with their brain, that's the thing that shuts down. They're less curious. They perhaps deal with things in a shorter manner. Maybe their
Yeah,
tone starts to get affected as well, a bit more blunt. And
yeah,
like you said, they just want to get to a decision. Let's just
mm,
move on. Let's make it happen because then I can move on to the next thing on the agenda.
yeah, yeah,
So there's just less ability to play with ambiguity
mm,
and curiosity and see
mm,
where that leads the business. And I appreciate that that feels like a luxury at times, particularly when your whole focus is on deliverables, but to not put any time aside for that or shut things down permanently is going to kill the innovation in your organization. And that, oh, we know what we say,
yeah,
innovate or die.
Yeah, innovated. I love that.
Well, you do. It's you. You had to. I had to adopt it.
I had to persuade you about that one, didn't I? Yeah. But there's something I want to talk about that we talked about yesterday, which is something in neuroscience called theory of mind, which
Mm.
is because we're always trying to predict what's going to happen, what's around the corner, because the brain hates uncertainty. We always want to know what's kind of going on. Theory of mind is where, when we're under pressure, we're trying to work out what somebody else is thinking. And so, whereas normally, if you're relaxed and happy and someone smiles at you, go, oh, that's lovely, this is great. We're getting on really well together. Let's have another cup of coffee. But if you feel that when you're under pressure and you can't actually read people, your signaling goes completely off scale. So somebody may be frowning at you because they're thinking of something. I mean, I'm terrible at frowning, and people always think that they go, Sreya, what's wrong? Are you angry? I'm like, no, I'm actually thinking. So so it's actually that, you interpret people's physiology wrongly, or something that they say, or the way that they look at you, or whatever it might be. And that's when trust starts eroding, relationships start eroding, results start reloading. Forget your KPIs, they're going to go completely out the window. They really are. So actually, all these things there's a real knock-on effect from it. It just doesn't stop in, I'm tired and I can't think anymore. It has an impact on everything, which is quite scary.
And that starts to then filter what reality looks like
Yeah,
until it becomes true in your own mind.
yeah. You tell your own stories, don't you? That
Yeah.
gremlin goes, oh, I saw that. I think they don't. And before you know it, you've gone down a dark tunnel that they can't get out of. But the other thing to remember, that we're habitual creatures, because that saves energy, and we're always looking for patterns, and the hippocampus is always finding those memories, and the thalamus, all about directing where things go, and the lens that we see. So people are always going to revert back to bad habits. So they might have had some wonderful leadership training or brilliant relationships with people, but they'll ultimately revert back to that kind of, right, head in the sand. I got to keep safe. I'm not, I don't trust anyone. The only person I can trust is myself.
And I guess it's less prevalent in conversations these days. Adam raised a question to you partway through around imposter syndrome or
Yeah.
imposter feelings, and you said no, they're biases.
Yeah.
And I think that potentially when we're in this bandwidth that we're talking about today is when they get released, those
Mhm.
unnerved feelings. And I think it's the brain's, I don't know, you'll have to tell me if I'm right, but it's almost like the brain's way of trying to make sense of why am I feeling this? Sometimes we put it down to that gut feel, but
Yeah.
it's not always reliable because
I
it's
know.
based on past experiences that are not quite fitting this
Yeah.
particular scenario,
Yeah.
and yet it's all it's got to go with because the brain's just predicting the closest thing.
Yeah.
So
And
that's
that
when to
that
take a step back, isn't it? And just kind
oh,
of go, stop, think, let me reassess and bring some cognitive function back so I
yeah.
can actually put the right approach into this
Mm.
conversation.
Yeah, you're quite right, because what you're relying on is memories. So the hippocampus, but your memory is not like a nice 35 mil film, or digital film that just comes out. It will fill in the gaps. The brain can only doesn't store all your memories, because obviously it's not big enough to do that. It'll store what resonates with it, what's important. So when it tries to put a memory back together, it'll fill in the gaps to make sense of it, which is why one person will say, you go out for dinner, and they'll remember a conversation, or how something happened, and the other person will remember something completely different, because their meanings are very different, and the way the brain has stored those memories are very, very different, and the way it retrieves it.
Now, I was thinking about that with a business dinner I had, and I was thinking I can remember all of the conversation, but I couldn't remember what other people had for dinner, or
Yeah,
myself for that
yeah.
matter.
It's where your focus was.
Yeah, exactly, because I was intently listening to the client, and therefore the food was almost irrelevant.
Yeah, yeah. So
So,
people are doing that every day at work.
yeah, and constantly deciding what's important, what's not, what do I miss out, what do I move
Yeah,
on from? That's quite dangerous, isn't
yeah,
it?
yeah. Then I think our perceptions become really, really, we're very introspective. We feel in our body, don't we? If we don't have that opportunity to stop, pause, think about things, we become very introspective. We're using our intuition, which is not wrong actually. Your intuition is there to guide you. But it's quite interesting with stress, because in stress, and I did all of this for my research for my MSc, was that you have two types of stress. You have eustress and you have distress. And it's a real balance line about which way you go. So your client, for instance, who phoned you about the presentation, she could have been feeling introspectively, my heart's beating, I'm feeling quite, my adrenaline's flowing, my heart, I can hear my heartbeat going. That actually that could be taken one of two ways. It could be taken as positive or negative, depending on your memories and your habitual way of thinking and behaving. So for her, it was frightening. So it was distress, which was where it comes from. Cortisol goes rising and all the things that we know about. Whereas actually, people could go, God, this is really exciting. I'm getting excited about this now.
Mm.
Really looking forward to it. And that's eustress, good stress if you want. And so helping people, if you can just get people to stop and actually say, is this good or is this bad? What am I telling myself? What's the story here? Because in a way, we're lying to ourselves, aren't we? Really? Because it's a default habit that you're referring to.
Well, you've just reminded me of a really nice phrase that I learned a long time ago, which is beliefs are the stories you tell yourself.
Yeah,
But actually, I take that a stage further to say sometimes they're not your stories. Sometimes they're what
yeah,
have been told to you. And that could be by previous leaders, previous line managers, by your obviously parental school.
yeah.
So we carry them with us. And if enough people are saying the same thing, you start to believe it.
Mm, mm,
And if we don't stop and think and question and build that curiosity into what do I think is true based on what I know now, and start to scratch it and overwrite it, it's you're going to carry that with you,
yeah.
and it's going to hold you down and hold you back.
So how do you think that erodes trust? What do you think that you and I talk a lot about trust? What do you think that means for trust?
I think over time, if you are constantly going into meetings where you're shut down, you're not listened to, you stop putting the effort in. You therefore don't trust. There's different levels of trust, isn't there? There's trust that if I delegate this task to a member of my team, I know they've got the capability to do that job and they'll do it. They are reliable. And then there's trust with information that's perhaps a bit sensitive.
Mm.
Am I confident they're not going to pass that on to another colleague or another department or to
What,
the
like we're seeing in the
client?
news at the moment?
Yeah, well, I didn't want to do that, but yeah, exactly. So,
Yeah.
for me, there's different layers to trust. But so that's why building trust from the bottom up is so crucial because
Mm.
you can't go, and it's a bit like building the foundations on a house. You don't go putting the roof on until you've put the solid depth of foundation in.
Yeah.
And once trust is gone, as with any relationship, it's a hard way back to building anything that feels
Mm.
meaningful.
Mm. Yeah. Almost impossible sometimes.
But that is, I think relationships do become fractured and
Yeah.
are and some breaks are cleaner and can come back together and others just leave things misaligned
Mm.
and non-corrected. And I guess that's where it needs all parties to come together and look at the higher purpose of why they're still in conversations with each other.
Now you have a lovely saying that you said, we were talking about this yesterday. It's hard to think when you're being chased by a saber-toothed tiger.
Well, it's your phrase.
Okay, yeah. Okay. But that leads into what can leaders do about this? Can I just quickly just talk about the brain health and what it does, the stats on that?
Yes, yeah. You sent me that over yesterday, and that's why we
Yeah,
said we have to push that into this episode because there's a lot of new evidence that you've been pulling out, which I
yeah.
don't think is out there in general listening land. So
No.
go ahead, take some floor.
Yeah, no, okay. So what I've been doing is I think it kind of really came out of I started my friends started talking to me about collagen and protein and all these things that you should be doing for your brain health, which I'd kind of thought were a bit Mickey Mouse, if I'm honest. But now I have my collagen every morning, and I take my protein and how important it is. And
Me too.
because we talk about these things, don't you and I? And that's why because brain health is so important for us as human beings. So here are just some stats which I was quite shocked by. So I explored this in I did this years ago when I did well-being some research about what would have happened if because well-being really should be seen as preventative health. But neurological conditions are now the leading cause of ill health and disability worldwide. In 2021, more than 3 billion people were living with the neurological condition, and that's from WHO. The cost is enormous. Uh, Global direct healthcare spending on brain disorders was estimated at 1.7 trillion in 2019, going up 3.5% year on year, and that's from the Lancet, so very, very good
Well, that's
uh,
pre-COVID, so that's
source.
staggering.
Yeah, that's true. A very good point. Yeah. The wider economic burden is even greater. Mental disorders alone were estimated to account for 4.1, the economic value of around 5 trillion. But this is where I think brain health and psychosocial safety and everything that we're talking about becomes so important. In 2024, the Lancet commissioned a piece of research, and it estimated that around 45% of dementia cases could be potentially be prevented or delayed by addressing modifiable risk factors across the life course. And of course, that would be health, exercise, diet, the way you perceive, your mindset, all the kind of stuff that we kind of talk about. But that is absolutely massive.
I
45%
was just about
could
to
be
say nearly
prevented.
half of those people suffering with dementia are could have had a different outcome.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's staggering, absolutely staggering. And so this is why I'll just read here why we're talking about brain health, why it's so important. The brain economy, shaped by AI, complexity, and constant change, protecting brain health is not only a health issue, it's a leadership, productivity, and economic issue. When brain health is compromised, judgment, trust, adaptability, and performance all come under strain. This last sentence is built around an inference of evidence about why the numbers matter from the WHO. So hence why brain capital now is so important, why the brain economy is talked about, why brain health is talked about. Well, the brain is now, it always has been, but it's center stage. That's it.
And you mentioned, just to bring it back to the trust thing, one of the things that's just prompted into my head because you mentioned tech, is about trusting your own judgment. And if
Mm,
you are cognitively functioning well, you're likely to trust your own judgment more.
yeah, good
So that
point.
that was
Yeah,
just the other thing that came to my head listening
yeah,
to.
yeah.
So it's not all doom and gloom, is it? There are plenty of
No,
companies out there that are constantly evolving and adapting. There are those that are at the forefront of the AI change, and not least the companies that are in that space, technologically developing products to support sectors or organizations in improved functioning so that the human is free to create, ideate, and critically think,
yeah,
to use
yeah,
our phraseology. When that's going on, let's have a look at, because I think a healthy question is, what are the adapters doing well? What are those leaders out there that have kind of got this? They may not know all the scientific stuff that we've perhaps just shone a light on in this conversation, but what is it that's going on in those businesses that are adapting and giving consideration and good balance to the integration of technology and to protecting the brain capital of their workforce?
yeah. I think there are a couple of things I put together. This is for my work and some of the clients I work with, which I called "How can leaders help? What is their role?" The first one I think is actually acknowledging other people's stress, Too often you
Mm.
go, "How are you feeling?" People go, "Yeah, I'm fine," and you know that's rubbish. You've got to take the time, as you talk about, time to listen to people, what people are actually saying. The other one is about fostering that psychological safety. If you've created that environment where you can challenge, it's not softly, softly we're talking about here. This is actually creating an environment where people can be challenged comfortably and safely and actually be genuine in how they respond and how they answer things. Because otherwise you're never going to develop and grow as an organization. Ask the right questions. We know that's a really important one. It's not just about, surface. It is perhaps having those coaching skills to understand and go a bit deeper because we know that if you ask somebody a deeper question, they have to stop and think about it. And perhaps it's the first time they've
Mm.
stopped and thought about it, which is really, really valuable. We know without doubt that breaks are so important. You've got to give yourself time to recover, and you've got to give the brain that time to be making all those connections with everything it's been thrown at. So, we hear a lot, don't we, about people who are going back to back meetings. What a waste of time. They're not
Yeah.
going to do anything because they can't think about anything.
Well, there's no time to
So,
process the previous meeting, follow-up notes, all those things. I mean, luckily we've got transcripts on digital record and all the rest of it. But
yeah,
but ultimately, if you don't process down what's happened in the last meeting, what the hell are you ever going to do with it before
yeah,
if you're
yeah.
switching on, especially if it's in a completely different mode or a completely different environment that's not connected?
Mm,
We know that brain's always trying to make our brain's always trying to make connections. So
yeah.
you'll be carrying it with you into the next meeting.
Yeah. And that's what, just thinking about it, that's what's interesting about when they're talking about AI and people actually becoming lazy, because part of the whole achievement sense of thinking about things and reaching a decision or having an insight or whatever it might be is that you kind of persevere at something. And AI is not actually but you don't need to persevere. It's like you and I yesterday going through all the stuff that we were going through. All of a sudden, we got really confused about what we were doing because there was
Yes.
too much you to process, you
Yeah.
know.
And it is overload.
Yeah, yeah,
And you said to me yesterday, I tend to forget this stuff coming out of AI. And it only seems to go in when I've written it.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
it's interesting because I think you're not alone with that. I
yeah.
think it becomes too easy to grab something that looks half good, half
Mm,
okay. And sometimes it does raise some really interesting points, especially if you're challenging it and arguing it, it pushes
yeah,
back. Um, but if you haven't done that and you're just taking first base information, that's when you are lazy with tech. You're not
mm,
utilizing it as a support to your brain. You are replacing your brain, and therefore it's not going to sit in your hippocampus. It's
mm,
sitting in the memory of your AI chatbot.
yeah, yeah. And I think that's, I really do think that when you were talking about at the beginning that some people aren't using AI, everyone's talking about relying on it too much or they don't know how to use it. It almost seems to me that you and I could come up with a policy about how to use AI from a brain perspective and a human
Mm,
perspective,
that's a good
a
idea.
kind of five-pointer how to actually use it properly. Because I think people are probably thinking about it from a practical point of view and strategic point of view, but not actually from a health and a brain point of view.
You're absolutely right. I was talking to a Ned last week who was saying that he's put that on the agenda of a board meeting
Yeah,
because they're looking at systems, but they're not really talking current AI.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Which leads me on beautifully to resilience. You need to help people. I mean, resilience is such a massive subject, and it's not just about a bowl of fruit in the, reception, but helping people to cognitively reframe things, to real structure problem solving, to think calmly, to restore their whole cognitive processes really in thinking. And again, that kind of comes back to making time for the relationships, doesn't it? To make time to
Yeah.
stop and think and ask each other questions.
The space to think.
Yeah,
We always talk about reflection, but it's slightly different to that. It's allowing people to mull stuff over, chew
yeah,
fat, as we used to say,
yeah, yeah.
so that you are playing with an idea rather than defending it or rejecting it.
Mm, mm,
Because we know so many great ideas land up in a drawer. the theoretical drawer, because they don't get the light of day in the conversation. And that could be tomorrow's next big win for that
Yeah.
organization.
Yeah. Yeah. And the last one, which, and there's many we could put in here, obviously, but is actually leading by example. You
Hmm.
know, people forget that, or leaders forget that people are picking up on their signals because the leader is the safety, isn't it? You know, if you're in the bad books, the leader, you're out, especially at the moment with, well, anyway. So the I'm not going to go there again.
It's
So
a dangerous,
I know
dangerous
you can't help
time.
it, can you? But so how the leader behaves is the signals, the messages, and the way that the people around them will behave. So
Yeah.
it's so important.
So I had in my notes about leading with steadiness, being steadfast,
Yeah,
because people need to feel secure with their leader. They need to know that their feet worth following in the
yeah,
business.
yeah. Nice one, nice one. And that they're being seen by that leader
Yeah.
and acknowledged.
So, oh, the other one on my list that I think you've sort of lent to, but not explicitly said, is about assumptions and
Yeah,
slowing down so that you don't make assumptions with those judgments.
yeah. There's a really good technique that you can use that perhaps people don't use is actually repeating what someone said. So let me just get this right. Are you, what I think I heard you say was, because so often we get that wrong, and there are lots of little techniques that people could. I was talking to a client about this yesterday, about how you get true understanding is by playing things back and asking different questions or having a stop phrase. They were worried that when they're put into situations, sometimes they forget what to say. So we were working on, right, why don't you have a stock phrase that becomes your go-to, it gives you your moment for your brain to kind of put everything together and make sense of things. So I think there are lots of techniques that people can use.
Mine used to be, oh, that's really interesting.
Oh, that's really interesting. Yeah. Tell me
So,
more about
or
that.
you've sparked my curiosity, or
Yeah,
something like that
yeah,
is what I
yeah.
usually throw in there.
Well,
Gosh, but
it's great.
for
Yeah,
people that work with me, they go, "Oh yeah, I hear her say
yeah,
that."
yeah,
But
yeah,
it's that chance to breathe in your breathing space for your brain, isn't it?
yeah. It is. It is. Yeah,
So here's something that you just prompted me on, not to do with this, but with that kind of chance to feed back to somebody what you think you've heard. That's quite a. I was taught that in sales training, where
yeah,
you summarize back what you've heard. So it's to clarify that you've heard correctly, so that you can get the shopping list together of the sales requirement,
yeah,
but also to demonstrate to them that you've listened and that you've understood.
yeah.
So it worked in both ways. But someone told me a long time ago that the brain, in a typical one-on-one conversation, we go into self-talk every 16 seconds or so.
Oh, I don't know. I
And
haven't
so
heard that.
the suggestion with that was that we spend more time in a conversation thinking about what we're going to say next than actually listening to the person that and what they're actually saying.
Mm.
And it kind of makes sense that when we're in this heightened stress state and we're all
Hmm.
let's get it done, 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 that might even squeeze down to just a few seconds
Mm. Yeah, or milliseconds even.
so that those tolerances are on such a tight bandwidth, no listening's happening. So
Yeah,
actually, for me, out of this conversation, listening is something a leader needs to do at a real deep level
yeah.
without losing curiosity and for the meaning of understanding.
Mm. Mm. I think you're right. I mean, you just made me think about when I used to work in creative advertising and with client meetings. You know that if you were nervous or you were worried, you, you'd be presenting work, but you weren't actually listening to the feedback
Exactly.
because part of you just wanted to get out that, well, it's fight or flight. You want to get out of that room as fast as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Gosh, we've covered a lot today. So let's just
Yeah.
bring it back down and just do our check off on whether we've covered everything. So, state before strategy. If your brain is depleted, your judgment is going to narrow. I think
Yeah.
we've covered that quite
I think that.
heavily.
So that's so important about your mindset. What is your mindset?
Yeah, and I guess that takes me back to my early days in as a manager, my first management job, where I was put on all these leadership courses, and we used to have all these books like Life's an Attitude, and
Yeah,
but I did. I used to sort of my first office as a manager was on 2 floors, so the first landing I used to use to breathe, and I used to put my game on. My game face went on.
yeah,
I walked up the last steps and charged into the room with a good morning.
yeah,
I was running a sales office.
yeah, yeah. No, you just reminded me. I always used to wear different shoes.
Did you?
It was like stepping into a persona of how I wanted to feel and how I wanted to be, and I got to the point where people would look under the table to see what shoes I was wearing.
To know what persona you had
Yeah,
on. Oh,
yeah,
brilliant. That's so Devil's Wears
yeah,
Prada.
yeah. It is.
Well, the
Yeah,
worst thing I did is I used to have when I was a rep, I used to sell I used to have driving shoes so I didn't damage the back of my nice leather heels.
yeah.
And one day, because back in those days, you used to have catalogs in a case and everything. And I remember walking into reception and put the bag down, and I was all lopsided. I had one driving shoe on and one killer heel shoe on.
I love it. Amazing. There's great stories. They're brilliant, aren't they? Really, really brilliant.
Oh dear. Right, where
Yeah.
were we?
Right. Your
Second,
second point.
low
Your
social battery changes relationships, not just energy.
yeah,
Um, so we talked about trust. That's really important. How it impacts trust and almost distorts where trust's sitting because it
yeah,
may not where you think trust is gone, has it really?
yeah, yeah,
Your interpretation really, it's how you're reading the room.
yeah.
Um,
Well, that's the theory of mind as well, isn't it? And psychosocial
exactly.
safety, all of that.
All of
Yeah,
those things you've mentioned, and the way it impacts collaboration and ultimately your own confidence in the room.
yeah,
And then the last thing was about us as human beings and our human brain and how to protect that brain capital. Um, and that it isn't just about being brain technical. So, this integration that brain health underpins brain capital and that that's becoming our strategic asset in
yeah,
organizations.
yeah.
I think we've covered those three. Hopefully, you agree, those of you that are
Oh,
listening.
I hope people have, and yeah,
And also picking up on Soraya's point, maybe we should put something together. We have learned quite a lot about AI, us wise women on
yeah.
Brainy. So if you do like the idea of us putting something together as a how-to guide to bring AI into your business and encourage brain capital,
Mm,
let us know.
yep. And I also do have a presentation I have written for some of my other clients all about the brain on AI and what's happening. So we've got quite a lot of information. But if I can just close this episode on a paragraph. In a world of AI, complexity, and constant change, the advantage will not come from technology alone. It will come from how well we protect and grow the human capacities behind judgment, trust, adaptability, creativity, and decision making. That is brain capital, and brain health is the foundation beneath it.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah,
Nice
unfortunately.
close. Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
We'll be back with another little brainy chat very, very soon. Enjoyed this episode? Listen to more at brainycasts.com.